What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we're going to be talking about 10 players that you should be picking up as we head into week 6 of the fantasy football season. As always, I'm recording this on Monday, so if anything happens in the Monday night game that requires me to leave a note, that note will be in the comment section down below. Just make sure you check for that if there is a major injury in Monday night's game. But without wasting any more time, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about these waiver wire pickups. All right, so before we hop into the 10 players, I do want to give you guys a list of double check players. All of these players are going to be owned in over 50% of fantasy football leagues, according to Sleeper's rostership percentages. But if any of these guys are available on your waiver wire, they would be guys that I would consider picking up as well. Those players are going to be Kareem Hunt, Chase Brown, Justin Fields, Darnell Mooney, Tucker Kraft, Trey Sermon, Geno Smith, Rico Dowdle, Alexander Madison, Caleb Williams, Braylon Allen, and Josh Downs. So just make sure you double check your waiver wires in case those guys are available for you. So now moving on to my number one pickup of the week, it is going to be Tank Bigsby of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is rostered in about 31% of leagues, and I get it. Last week I mentioned that I wanted to stop talking about Tank Bigsby each and every week because he has been on 3 of our last 4 waiver wire videos on this channel, but the community, they just haven't been listening to us. They haven't been listening about Tank Bigsby's production and why he should be picked up in fantasy football. And now he's the number one waiver wire pickup on the week for most people now, looking at what he did last week. That being said, he is still under 50% rostership. Hopefully this is the last week that he's under 50% rostership because he has simply outperformed Travis Etienne for far too long now. It seems like a couple of weeks in a row now we've talked about Etienne being outperformed by Tank Bigsby, and it looks like he could be in store for even more work moving forward, maybe even to the point of where the Jacksonville Jaguars decide to make a flip as to who the starting running back is, or maybe they even decide to move on from Travis Etienne. I've seen him floated around in some potential trade rumors. That is all probably very speculative, but that being said, it does seem like Tank Bigsby has a full-time role or at least a 50-50 split in this backfield, and he definitely looks better with the touches that he's been getting. So like I said, hopefully he goes over 50% rostership this week, and I can stop yelling at people to pick up Tank Bigsby because you should be picking him up this week. Now let's move on to my number 2 guy. The next guy I want to talk about is Kirk Cousins for the Atlanta Falcons. He is rostered in about 41% of leagues right now, and Kirk, he looks like he's getting more and more comfortable in this Falcons offense, and he's coming off of a week here where he threw for over 500 passing yards and 4 touchdowns on a Thursday night football game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with a few top 10 finishes at the quarterback position now in weeks 2 and in weeks 5. I'd say I'd be more comfortable picking up Kirk Cousins here in week 6, especially if you need to fill in for a bye week. They do have a very easy matchup against the Carolina Panthers, and not to mention that not just this week's buys, obviously Patrick Mahomes is going to be on bye this week, but over the next couple of weeks, Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, all of these quarterbacks will have a bye week in the next couple of weeks, and over the next month, Kirk Cousins has some really good matchups, 4 really good matchups just to be exact. So I would be more comfortable picking up Kirk Cousins and streaming him and or playing him if you're in a super flex league in those matchups. Now let's move on to my next player. I am going to talk about Tyler Allgeier of the Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins' teammate. He is rostered in about 38% of leagues right now, and over the last 2 weeks, Tyler Allgeier has seen his snap percentages go from that 20% snap range all the way up to a 35 to a 40% snap range, and now this could probably be because Bijan Robinson was dealing with an injury that did leave him questionable going into week 5. I don't know. It just looks like Tyler Allgeier does have a part-time role in this offense, and he has some standalone value as well. So at the very minimum, Allgeier, he is a high-end handcuff option for me. I think he's one of the better running back handcuffs in football right now, and I think he's making a case for more and more touches each and every week. So that alone should make him somebody who is rostered in all league formats if you have the bench space. And on top of that, his next 4 matchups, just like Kirk Cousins, are all going to be against good defensive matchups where the teams he's playing currently all rank in the bottom third of the NFL when it comes to allowing fantasy points per game to the running back position. So over the next month or so, he should have some good opportunities to score for us in fantasy football. Now, my next player I want to talk about is Ty Chandler of the Minnesota Vikings. He is rostered in 36% of leagues, and Ty Chandler is simply not being talked about enough on waiver wire videos here this week, and that's probably because Minnesota has a bye week here in week 6. So even if he does end up becoming the starting running back of the Minnesota Vikings, which, yes, Aaron Jones did get hurt in this one. There is a chance that you're not even playing him this week. There's a 100% chance you're not playing him this week because they're on bye. Now, as I mentioned, Aaron Jones, he had an injury. He is going to be receiving an MRI on that here later this week, and we won't know the extent of the injury until we get the results from the MRI. Now, obviously, if that MRI comes back and Jones is not going to miss any time, you probably don't want Ty Chandler on your roster, but this is a speculative pickup for me and somebody that I'm going to be prioritizing on my waiver wire, because if it does come back that Aaron Jones is going to miss an extended period of time, Ty Chandler will be the #1 running back on this roster, and he's on one of the best offenses in the NFL right now. A lot of this is riding on the MRI, like I said, very speculative, but after the bye week, the Minnesota Vikings, they have a tough matchup against Detroit and then 2 very soft matchups against the Jaguars and the Colts. So if Jones misses time due to this hamstring/hip injury, Ty Chandler will be a starting running back, and that's somebody that I'm willing to gamble on here before we even know the results. Now, moving on to Jalen Tolbert, the wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. He is rostered in about 17% of leagues right now. He's one of my favorite realistic waiver wire pickups of the week, with Brandon Cooks now on IR and Tolbert having a very solid game in week 5 against the Steelers. In both games this year where Tolbert saw over 85% of the snaps, he has received 19 targets combined in those 2 games. So simply put, when he's on the field, Dak Prescott is targeting Jalen Tolbert. Now, Tolbert's going to have a very good matchup this week against the Lions, who currently rank 28th against the wide receiver position and are giving up about 37.5 fantasy points per game to the position. And then he will go on bye in week 7. So if you need somebody to pick up and play this week, Jalen Tolbert is a very, very solid option. Now let's talk about Tyrone Tracy Jr. for the New York Giants. He is rostered in about 34% of leagues, and he was filling in for an injured Devin Singletary in week 5, and he did so very, very nicely. He went for 129 rushing yards on 18 carries, and right now there's really no indication as to whether or not Singletary is going to miss this week's upcoming matchup versus the Bengals, but if he were to do so, Tracy would be a plug-and-play running back 2 here in week 6. Now that said, I wouldn't be burning a ton of my fab or maybe even burning a priority ad here on Tracy just due to the short-term nature of the start, but I think Tracy has made a case for even just a little bit more touches moving forward, even if Singletary is healthy. Now the next player we'll talk about is Roschon Johnson for the Chicago Bears. He's rostered in 31% of leagues, and DeAndre Swift, he's definitely turned it on over the last few weeks against some of the easier defensive matchups that he's had, but Roschon Johnson, he now has 30 opportunities in his last 3 games, and it looks like he is the clear handcuff to DeAndre Swift in an ascending Bears offense. Not to mention, it does seem like Roschon Johnson is the preferred goal line back in this offense. He's seen 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games. So that said, I would be adding Roschon as an insurance back if I had Swift on the roster, or if I was looking for some potential upside. Roschon could have another light matchup here against the Jags and could very well find himself on the goal line yet again. Now let's move on to Jordan Whittington of the Los Angeles Rams. He is rostered in about 34% of leagues. And again, this is another player that I suggested people pick up and play last week. He did fill in nicely. He posted 7 catches on 10 targets for 89 yards, but he's now going into week 6 where the Rams are going to be on a bye, so he is flying a little bit under the radar as well. Now, even though I do believe that Cooper Kupp is going to be back into the lineup here in week 7 once the Rams get out of the bye week, I do think that there's a case that Whittington could at least be the number 2 wide receiver alongside Cooper Kupp until Puka Nacua gets back in this lineup. I think if you can afford to hold Jordan Whittington over the bye week, he's definitely worth stashing just to see if this week 5 role that he had has any type of substance to it, or if it expands there in week 7 as the number 2 option to Cooper Kupp, or maybe Kupp is not even back in week 7 and Whittington is just the number 1 guy again. Now, my second to last guy I want to talk about is Tre Tucker of the Las Vegas Raiders. He is rostered in about 37% of leagues, and Tre Tucker, he didn't really do too much in week 5, mainly due to it being the Brock Bowers show, but keep in mind, he was a top 30 wide receiver on the week 2 weeks in a row in weeks 3 and in week 4, and there are tons of Davante Adams trade rumors circling around right now. It seems almost guaranteed that Davante Adams is going to be traded here by the end of the week. With Adams gone and off the field, Tucker, he's turned into a player who is seeing about 85% of the snaps each and every week, and he is a speed guy, so he has some big playability as well. I'd be picking him up, holding him throughout the week, see what happens with Adams, and once Adams is gone, or I guess maybe even if Adams doesn't come back to the lineup because he's not healthy, I do think that Tre Tucker is definitely worth the stash. And now my last and final pickup of the week, it's going to be Michael Wilson. He's rostered in about 24% of leagues, and if you're looking for a bye week stream or a 1-week rental, I do think that Michael Wilson, he has a great matchup here in week 6 versus the Green Bay Packers. Wilson's coming off of a game where he saw 5 receptions on 6 targets for 78 yards in week 5, and he has seen a full-time role in this offense for the majority of the year, seeing roughly 80% of the snaps in each and every game, and he's only 10 snaps on the season behind Marvin Harrison Jr., so definitely a full-time player in this Cardinals offense. Kyler Murray, he still has the ability to light it up each and every week. I do think this week's matchup against Green Bay could be one of those on paper that does look more likely that Kyler Murray scores a lot of points. Maybe Michael Wilson is a guy you pick up and stream, but this week in general is just not a very strong waiver wire week. So I think you have guys like this that you just take a shot on for 1 week and see what happens. So there you have it. There's 10 guys I would be picking up off of the waiver wire as we head into week 6 of the fantasy football season. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and make sure you go join the Discord. The Discord is free to join. There is no risk in doing that, and it is the best place to ask me questions and ask other people in our League FFB community questions that you may have about your rosters, waivers, trades, all of that good stuff. But I have nothing else for you guys today, so I will see you on our next episode. But until then, peace out.